Welcome one, welcome all to the Node, where we give you news, interviews, and DeFi education. I am Mike, aka Veteran Crypto, and I'm sure with me here soon will be David. but he's always like exactly on time or a little bit late. So with that, let me just really quick. I'll go through our socials and just kind of introduce where you can find us. Let's see here. So, if you want to join the conversation, join the chat, then come on over here to YouTube at the Node Network, all one word, and you can see all of our different offerings. So you can find all of our shorts, you can find all of our past live streams, and we truly are a network here. So we have our daily show, that you're watching now, the Node, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. We have Crypto and Chill Tuesdays and Fridays at 5 p.m. That's with me and Jeff, where we just kind of relax, maybe have a drink and just talk about what's gone on in the markets, over the past week. The Blockchain Report, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, immediately after this show. This is a pre-record that Jeff does, where he does deep dives into early projects, and many of which he is our subject matter expert on airdrop farming. So if you're into trying to get free crypto, it's a great show to watch. Sovereign Soil. This is on Saturdays at 6 p.m., where I share my experience with decades of not just military service, but emergency prep and homesteading. So I'm an active homesteader. As you can see behind me, I live in a cabin up in the woods, and have been doing this for a couple of decades now. And pretty much right after I retired from the military. So just kind of sharing my experience with people that are interested in that sort of thing. We got the daily market wrap with David, where he does 15 to 20 minutes of charts, technical analysis, and that is 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern at the market close. And so if you want David to take a look at a project, I highly suggest you jump in the chat here on YouTube, and he'd be more than happy, I'm sure, to take a look, if it is at a, kind of what's going on, with the chart and kind of, maybe what you can expect. I mean, it's not an exact science, but, it can definitely divine a higher probability of what the market's going to do based off of historical charts.
Well, yeah, what I do, Mike, is I take my divining rods.
Yes,
I go this way and I go that way,
and you wave them over a crystal ball, and then
exactly.
and then you shake your turtle rattle and throw the bones.
Exactly, and that's how you know if it's going up or down.
That's right. And then look at the stars.
It's mooning.
That's right. So Saturday nights, Jeff, he is also a DJ. And so he does music, but he has started to, and actually it sounds like he's starting to get quite the lineup of interviews. And so he lives in the Bay Area. And so I'm sure there's no shortage of DJs out there. But they do tutorials, they do interviews. So if you're into that sort of that style of music, if you are an aspiring DJ yourself, that is a great show to watch. The Red Pill on Thursday evenings. That's pretty much where a panel of about 4 or 5, 6, sometimes 6 of us get together. Usually by the end we're pretty drunk, and we just talk about all kinds of stuff that you're not supposed to talk about, politics, religion, relationships, all that kind of stuff. It's a great time. Sometimes it gets heated, sometimes the debates get heated, but you know what? We actually encourage that here. This isn't an echo chamber. We, actively want, our thought processes challenged. We want, that's the only way that you grow as an individual, intellectually, emotionally, whatever, is being open to opposing views, listening to those views, not to respond, but to understand, and then formulate a response. It's what adults used to do. I don't know what the hell happened and if social media is the cause of it, But yeah, it's
Yeah, but Mike, I need a safe space
right.
for my believies because
Mhm.
I can't be challenged.
Right. It,
Yeah.
it, if your point of view or your thesis cannot be challenged, you are not educated enough, or it isn't thought out enough. If you can't debate your stance on a topic, then you need to do more research. I'm and if I agree with you or not, and I'm speaking to myself as well. If I can't debate a topic, it means I'm not knowledgeable on that topic. That's just plain and simple. And then gaming and chill Wednesdays and Sundays at 6 p.m. Ellie, who's in the chat right now, and Jay, they usually jump on, and they've been playing Arc Raiders. Every once in a while, I'll jump on. I'm thinking about at some point I need to get a desktop. It just tasks my laptop out too much. I'm not able to game and stream at the same time. Um, and so I've been playing Windrose, which is a new pirate game, which is super freaking relaxing to play. A lot of it you're sailing around on a big pirate ship, and the crew, will sing like sea shanties and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of fun. And then of course you have like naval battles, with pirates, and it's just a ton of fun. So yeah, that's what we got going on YouTube. As you can see, we got plenty of channels, and here in the coming weeks, we're going to be launching a 24/7 music, AI generated music. So we don't have to worry about copyrights and stuff like that. And we're just going to have different genres of music that you can watch in the background, or listen to in the background while you do work or clean house or whatever it is that you're doing. So we truly are a network here. Now, if you want to follow us on X, it's at the Node channel, all one word. I'm not able to change this to the Node network. It was already taken. So we'll just have to deal with that. And then last but definitely not least is thenode.pro. So this is our official homepage. It's still under construction, but a ton of functionality here. So this is where you can find DeFi University, which is our 100% no cost to you courses. As you can see, this is the first course, FREE, not going to say the F word. But you can go through it. I mean, it's fully structured with quizzes and checks on learning, all of it. Everything from entry level all the way to advanced strategies. So there is no reason to not be knowledgeable about our traditional finance system, fiat currencies, cryptocurrencies, DeFi, all aspects of it. You can also join our community. So if you want to join DeFi University, you can do it here. If you want to join our no charge Discord and join a great community of people where we help each other out. We'll be here shortly. We're going to be talking about the exploit that happened over the weekend that affected Aave and like 8 other DeFi protocols. Through layer 0 is how it was accomplished. We've been all weekend, we've been helping our community with potentially finding channels to get their liquidity out. So that's kind of what we're all about here, is educating and helping people. So again, no charge. Coaching. This is a paid service, but it is a fully bespoke service that David offers, where it's one-on-one, very intensive. It is tailor-made for the individual based off their experience, their risk profile, how much that they're investing, what they want to invest in, just all those different aspects. So anything you want to add to that, David?
Look, when it comes to private coaching, what you're really looking to do is build a skill set. It doesn't really matter what your goal is. If you want to speed up the pace at which you build that skill set, then I think the best way to do that is probably to work with someone who's already made all the mistakes and learn from them, who can tell you, hey, this is probably what you want to be avoiding right now. And, Mike, that's what we were doing live on the channel, talking about Aave for the last couple of weeks here at the Node Network. Yeah, man. So, yeah,
No,
what a shame. What a shame what's happened.
Yeah. and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but 12 days ago now, we actually on one of our shows, our live shows, we were talking about the risks that we were seeing, the rising risks with having liquidity on Aave, and not to say that you know directly that the things that we pointed out was a contributor to what happened, but losing your DAO, your risk team, and your core developers, there's a serious brain drain that happened there. And and we'll get into this here in a minute, but I don't understand why there's still manual switches that have to be switched to shut off the movement of liquidity when exploits like this happen. I mean, I would think in this day and age, and with crypto, that in these protocols and the billions of dollars, they would have automated circuit breakers that as soon as the system detected that there was an exploit or a hack or something like that, it just goes into full lockdown. It doesn't allow, and then basically then a manual team can go in there and say, okay, what's going on? What do we need to fix so we can unfreeze things and allow people to to trade and do all the things that they need to do. So, but
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into the Aave discussion at some point during the session today. But yeah, it's really easy in hindsight to look back at a contract and say, hey, you know what? This should have been automated. We should have made sure that this market was frozen at this particular time. But unfortunately for Layer 0 and Kelp DAO and Aave and all the depositors on Aave, that was not the case over the last couple of days. So,
absolutely.
Real shame.
No, and again, I mean, not trying to toot our horn or anything like that. Just want to point out that the importance of finding good quality outlets of information. And we're not the only one. We're just one of many. But finding not hype boys and hype girls and influencers, finding channels like ours, because we're not influencers. We're not trying to influence you to do anything. We're trying to educate you. We're educators. So I want to stress that do not seek out echo chambers that simply, that confirmation bias that and I've fallen victim to it too. When I first got into crypto is, find places where I get warm fuzzies because they tell me all the things that I want to hear about the assets I hold. You need to seek out sources of information and education that point out the positives and the negatives, that the full picture. If you want to hear it or not, you need to hear it. That is how, again, like what I was talking about before with echo chambers and whatnot, is we need to shake up the way that we think about things. We need to listen to opposing views so that we have a more full picture of what's going on. So,
and Mike, honestly, like we should be looking for opposing views even more than we look for confirming views. We should be trying to red pill ourselves.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you added that, because that really is the truth. David, I think we're almost there with the newsletter. So where are we at, David?
Yeah, so I mean, I could actually show it off here a little bit, I think, if I just sign in a couple of times here. I've still got a little bit of work to do on this, but let me just go ahead and share my screen real quick, Mike, so that I can show everyone what is going on here just real quick. I'm going to go ahead and hop into Comet, and I'm just going to share this just real quick. So this is what the account page looks like after logging in. You can see here it says newsletter active. So now if I hop on over to the newsletter tab, I can see, okay, look at that. Your daily market edge, it says go to dashboard. So I click on the dashboard. Here's the newsletter generator. And now you see here it says my daily limit has been reached. So I've got to wait 7 hours and 45 minutes to generate it again. You can run it 2 times per day. And after each time this is run, it is auto emailed to your inbox. So this is working, and it's really, really good. There's a couple of like wiring up things that I need to do for the site. Now, if I hop back on over here to the account and then I go to the newsletter tab here, you can see that you could also generate the newsletter from within your account page. This is also where you can manage your subscription, manage it and cancel it. You can select, hey, you know what? I want to get those daily brief emails, or maybe you don't want to get them sent to your email inbox. Maybe you just want to get them right here on the website. You can do that too. So this is almost done. And if I could show something else to our audience just real quick also, let me go ahead and remove that screen share. And I want to share something different here. Let me just stop that screen share. I want to give everyone just like a preview of what I've been working on so far today. So this is just my entire screen that I'm sharing here. And check this out. Can you see this, Mike, over here in cursor?
Yeah.
So this is like version 1 of the new website. Notice we've still got everything up top: live courses, community, coaching, newsletter, store, join the node, log in, all that. But this is meant to be like more of a site that gives everyone an opportunity to like determine where they are and what it is that they're looking to do, and complete like a little quiz down here at the bottom to figure out, hey, where should we get started? So this is pretty cool. I'm going to continue to work on this throughout the day today, and I really want to be launching this hopefully by the end of the day today.
That's sweet. Oh, there we go. So yeah, no, and then of course we have our store where you can buy paperback copies of David's books. There's education, mindset, things like that, because that's something that we stress here quite a bit, is mindset, not just education, but the psychology of investing, the discipline, the focus, taking emotion out of your investing, because that is often used to manipulate you. That's pretty much what charts are. That technical analysis you see people doing. Candles are basically charted emotion. You can see, whenever there's, FOMO, you can see when there's FUD, the markets dump and they pump based off of, in large part, people's emotions. So, smart money uses your emotions against you. They use social media. They use, other levers to get retail to do stupid things so that they can liquidate you, so that they can take your liquidity. So, that is a very big part of investing, is, mastering yourself, and it transfers over into all aspects of life. If you can discipline your mind and, get control over your emotions, it's going to serve you well in, many aspects of life, in relationships, having the discipline to not react to situations. If you're with your partner having an argument, and instead of just being impulsive and blurting out something that you're going to regret later, or we've all been in those situations. Maybe you bite your tongue. Maybe you just focus on listening. And you get all the information before you respond. It's the same way with investing. Get all the information. Don't FOMO into something because you see that supposedly XRP is going to $10,000. Do the research, and
that's funny.
No, because, and as always, I use XRP because it's one of the most hyped projects out there.
Only $10,000? I thought XRP to $1 million a token.
I'm being conservative. I want to keep it realistic.
Right.
All right. So, with that being said, let's jump into a little bit of Nizu's. I got a couple of things pulled up. So I'm going to start out with this because I want people to be able to do their own research, but potentially get out of some of these wrapped versions of ETH that they are stuck with from Aave and other DeFi protocols. So it says introducing a wrapped ETH redemption protocol with ETH utilization at 100% on Aave. Many of those are frozen. Me and David were looking at those last night with Jeff during our founders meeting. Many lenders are currently unable to withdraw and face increasing risk if markets move. So this A wrapped ETH redemption protocol allows ETH lenders to exit into wrapped stake ETH, or I don't know what WEETH is, regain immediate liquidity, reduce exposure to liquidation risk. If you are just lending ETH, you can fully exit. If you have ETH collateral and another debt, your collateral is seamlessly swapped into wrapped stake ETH or wrapped EETH, whatever that is, while your debt remains the same. So it looks like this potentially, again, do your own research, potentially a way to get your liquidity out. And there was one other one that I posted to our Discord earlier this morning where somebody posted, and whenever you're getting out of low liquidity positions or pools, there's a thing called slippage, and it's something that you need to keep an eye on, because I mean, we reported on somebody that due to a sandwich attack, they lost like $54 million due to slippage. But you can get significant slippage if you're not paying attention and actually initiate a swap. But somebody posted that they only had to take a haircut of 2.2%, which, with everything that's going on, might not be such a bad thing. Being able to get out of some of these wrapped versions of ETH that were exploited, with the thinning liquidity, might be worth taking a look at. What are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, what's so interesting to me today, Mike, is that ETH and Bitcoin are actually up a touch. So
Yeah.
I guess the largest DeFi money market being essentially frozen is somehow good. Number go up because of that. Kind of funny to see that, but this exploit, man, of layer 0 and Kelp DAO really seems as though it was a layer 0 exploit at the end of the day. But yeah, it is so far this year, with an estimated loss as it stands now of $293 million. This incident is triggered a contagion event across the entire decentralized finance ecosystem because of the widespread integration of Kelp's LRT, that rsETH. So this is a really, really big deal. And it's interesting because liquidity has been exiting Aave as many of those markets are frozen and at 100% utilization. And you know where it's been going to, Mike? It's been going to Morpho. It's been going to Morpho.
I'm not surprised. And if you have something to show that, I would love to see it, because as soon as I heard what was going on with Aave, like one of my first reactions was to check Morpho's price and potentially enter into a long on Morpho, because those that don't know, Morpho is a direct competitor to Aave and has been growing at an incredible rate. It's on base. It's multi-chain, but it's originally on base, and is used heavily by Coinbase and institutions for their vaults. As far as liquidity and a bunch of their kind of tokenized offerings, and it's what Coinbase uses for their Bitcoin and ETH loans. And so I'm very bullish on Morpho, and I've yet to hear of any major issues that have ever come out with Morpho.
Yeah, the thing that's so interesting to me about this exploit is that it's really exposing the flaws of the pooled collateral system that Aave was operating. That architecture clearly is flawed. And Aave v4, which, generated all of this controversy, the risk manager Chaos Labs leaving, the dev team that built v3 leaving, with all of that controversy, it really made me think, okay, well, what's the problem with this type of pooled collateral architecture on Aave? Well, we can see that today, exactly what the problem is. If there's a bad debt, it needs to be socialized across the entire system. Whereas on Morpho and on Euler, where you have these isolated markets. If there's bad debt in an isolated market, it cannot spread to the rest of the ecosystem. And so, on Morpho, it's just so interesting to see the different response to the same pieces of collateral, because Gauntlet, one of the really big risk curators on Morpho, and LE7 Labs, another big risk curator on Morpho, those guys were lowering LTVs for rsETH markets and disabling borrowing in rsETH markets, like well before this blew up for Aave and Layer Zero and Kelp DAO. So, they saw the writing on the wall.
Can you like drill in on that a little bit? Because that's actually, I didn't know that. That's something interesting. So as a front run to what happened, it looks like that they maybe saw something of concern. If they were kind of like hedging against that rsETH, that was the what was used to through Layer Zero to the hackers used to exploit. So, I mean, is there any more information you got on that? Like,
Sure.
what? Yeah, please.
Sure. Some of the agents that post on X, they actually do post some really valuable content, especially the AI XBT agent. So, Morpho Blue, during the 72-hour period where Aave lost 33% of its deposits, Morpho Blue grew by 14% to 2.4 billion in TVL during that same period of time. $340 million migrated directly from Aave E mode into Morpho's ETH and wrap staked ETH vaults. So Gauntlet, which is one of the big risk curators on Morpho Blue, Gauntlet's Morpho vault, they paused rsETH borrows 6 hours before the exploit went public. So that's kind of interesting that, they really saw the writing on the wall and they were able to take action.
Would you happen to know if they have automatic circuit breakers? Like do they have an AI that's maybe like finding these issues, or are they still using manual circuit breakers like Aave and most other DeFi protocols?
I'm pretty sure it's a combination of both. If you take a look at markets on Morpho, you can see that there are automated circuit breakers there. But I believe that the curators are actually humans, like human beings. And those risk curator human beings can step in and pause a market also. But there's a core difference that we need to talk about, though, between Aave and Morpho and Euler, and that is pooled versus isolated vaults. So on Morpho and on Euler, you have these isolated vaults where if there's bad debt in one isolated vault, by design, it cannot spread to the entire protocol. On Aave, however, and this was going to be just, I think,
liquidity firewalls.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. But on Aave, it's pooled liquidity. And so that means if there's a really big piece of bad debt, as we're seeing with this rsETH, the losses need to be socialized. And that's resulted in the biggest markets in DeFi, the biggest money markets in DeFi on Aave, essentially freezing up and ceasing to work. So the difference in architecture is a big deal. And maybe, just maybe, this helps us to understand why Aave V3, the engineering team that built it, they didn't want anything to do with V4. And so they exited, they left. And the same thing with Chaos Labs, the risk manager. Although there is something to be said for the fact that, maybe Chaos Labs should have done a better job with that rsETH market and not allowing it to be used, as collateral, or maybe not allowing it to grow so big. It seems as though it may have been oversized based on the amount of risk that you had to take to hold rsETH. So RE7 Labs, another one of those really big risk curators over on Morpho, they delisted rsETH entirely back in February. And they delisted it, citing the exact concern that ended up getting exploited.
Holy shit.
Isn't that crazy?
That's
so,
dude,
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it's not like people didn't know about this. Like, this was all out there in the open for anyone who knew to find it. It's just that, look, if you're Aave and your engineering team and your risk manager leave, there's no one to find this stuff, So
Well, and that's what we pointed out, 12 days ago, was that was some of the red flags that we were worried about. Is just, if you don't have a risk team that's, looking for and finding these things, and not to say that, Chaos Labs was, this amazing team that, could have prevented this from happening. Because, obviously they've been running things for quite some time, and there was these glaring issues that it looks like, pretty much everybody over at Morpho, was recognizing and, kind of hedging their risks against by delisting and, kind of, paring back, a lot of their pools that use that rsETH, liquid, token. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
So Mike, here's the thing. These pooled lending markets like Aave, they socialize losses across every depositor. And it looks like the depositors in the wrapped ETH market, it looks like they might be on the hook by no fault of their own. They're on the hook simply because of the architecture of Aave.
And you barely got out. Like, it was
dude.
a couple of days before it happened, because I remember us, on our live show talking about it, and you're like, maybe after the show, I'm going to have to look at getting my liquidity.
I ended up doing that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for it.
It was in the nick of time too.
Oof. Yeah, I got out by the skin of my teeth. Very, very close. And wait.
Because you had a decent amount of liquidity on there, didn't you?
Yeah. I had damn near my life savings on there.
Holy shit.
So, yeah.
Dude, you did like the Neo Matrix,
bro.
So you're like dodging shit.
I'm telling you, man. The start of this bear market for me, I've literally been Neo from the Matrix, just dodging bullets left and right, literally and figuratively. It's been a crazy couple of months. First, it's October 10th, and I dodged a bullet on October 10th because I was super hedged. I was levered long, but I had a really, really big hedge. And so that saved me on October 10th. And then, now with this Aave problem, I was able to exit my Aave positions literally just a couple of days, maybe 3 days before this all went down. So very, very happy to still be here, standing and alive and thriving in DeFi, even with all of this drama and all of this pain for a lot of people out there, man. So,
and I actually, I don't know if you got my message. I actually did reach out to, what was that?
Derive.
Yeah, I reached out to Derive. So we'll see if I hear back from them. But I know that that's a protocol that you use quite heavily. So
I do.
We'll see if we can get them on. But
I do. I'd love the opportunity to talk to them.
No, absolutely. Well, and Morpho, even with all that liquidity moving over there, it's still down about 2%, over 24 hours. Over the past week, it's up 15%. Over the past month, about 9%. And over the past year, it's up 114%. So I can't help it. It's just I try to find things wrong with base and base protocols, and not to say that they're immune, but there has been far less issues over there. Aerodrome had an exploit, but it was a URL exploit. So basically, people were going to the wrong website, not knowing it, connecting their wallet, and that's how they got exploited. So it wasn't really the protocol. And other than that, I really haven't heard of a whole lot on base. So that's kind of, if something goes awry with Aerodrome, especially with the locks, I'm hosed, because the locks, I can't do anything. It's locked. So if somehow somebody exploits that, I don't know if that's even possible, because they're, those are locked smart contracts that are, basically somebody would have to hack my wallet to basically steal those NFTs. But
so Mike, there's quite a bit of education in the courses, specifically in the investor mindset course, about risk management and the way that we think about risk management. And
Mhm.
so, last night I was forced to confront something called zero overnight risk. So, what that means is if a position of yours were to go to zero overnight,
Yeah.
would you survive or would you be ruined? And
Oh, I
so,
mean, I'd still, I mean, I'd still be able to pay my
right,
bills.
right. No, I'm just saying, that a position is too big
Mm.
if it were to go to zero overnight, and that would result in a big hole in your portfolio that could take potentially months or years to recover from. So
Yeah.
I was forced to confront that for myself last night. Thank goodness everything turned out to be okay. But yeah, it's just really something to think about. And Mike, I'm looking right now at this market on mainnet on Aave V3, the USDT market, man, and it's crazy because there's 2.6 billion dollars, the size of the market right now, but there's only $4,700 of liquidity. So that means it's 100% utilization. You can't exit. And
Yeah.
now there's only $1,600 of liquidity. We were looking at this last night. Wasn't there like $17 of liquidity or something on a
Yeah.
$2.6
Yeah.
billion
It was like
market?
$17.86. But there was like $6.8 billion, in there, but there wasn't any available. So really the only way to, for liquidity to become available is either people to pay back their loans, which why would they? It's, you got, or, um, more, well, they're locked. So, really there's nothing that can be done. It's going to be interesting to see, how this all plays out. Um, One thing it looks like I want to point out here, and a little off topic, but Crispy says, "Be careful." So whenever you open, and I've noticed this quite a bit on my Coinbase wallet, you'll see these tokens in there, and sometimes they have ridiculous valuations. Like at one point, I opened my wallet and I had $4 billion supposedly, but it was in a token with no liquidity available. So basically, if I didn't know better, I might have clicked on it to see if I could get that $4 billion out. And there's exploits in those. There's these. They're called ghost tokens. So if you ever open your wallet and you don't know where the token came from, it's not something you bought or something like that, do not engage with it. Do not click on it. Don't do anything with it. Don't try to cash out of it. Don't do anything. They're taking advantage of your emotions and and your greed. Greed being an emotion. So be very, very careful with that.
Yeah.
Um, So it looks like it says alert Solana lending markets under strain as DeFi outflows intensify. Fallout from the Kelp DAO rsETH hack has reached Solana, with Camino Finance seeing USDC utilization hit 100% in key pools and multiple vaults above 95%, signaling severe liquidity stress. So this is having a chain reaction, and not just on ETH, but now on Solana.
Yeah, and it's not just, Ethereum mainnet or its layer twos or Solana. It seems like it's most chains are being impacted by this. And also it looks like there's a growing list of protocols. The last check I saw, it was right around 30, 30,
Oh,
30 protocols.
yeah.
Um,
No, I looked earlier this morning. It was 9. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's closer to 30 now. And, so Compound has had to devalue a lot of collateral. Radiant Capital has some problems. Spark Protocol, has already placed rsETH in isolation mode. So this saved the broader DAI and USDS stablecoin peg from taking a direct hit. But problems at Spark Protocol, problems at Pendle. So you know why there are big problems at Pendle? Because there are a couple of these crypto bonds. I think it's Avant and another one. I don't remember the name of the other protocol, but they're running these really, really big levered loops on Aave, essentially interest rate arbitrage plays, where they put up SUSDE as collateral, which is, a natively yield bearing asset, but it's only paying like what, 4% or something like that, 5%. So if they're putting up SUSDE and then borrowing Tether against it, USDT on mainnet, and they've looped that a bunch of times, well, if you're only earning 4 points, let's be generous, let's call it 5 points on your collateral, but all of a sudden that USDT market goes to 100% utilization, and so now you're stuck borrowing. And if I take a look at the borrow APY, you're stuck borrowing at 15% right now in that USDT market, and you can't exit. You're just stuck.
You
And
can't.
so,
Yeah.
and so there's like, a couple of protocols that have like, I think like 9-figure loops, like these big $100 million loops. And I think they're identical, like SUSDE borrowing USDT.
And they're losing 10%, APY.
No, dude, they're paying like 90 or 100% APY to keep the positions open. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
It's not just one position; they're looped.
Right. So it's if you've got SUSD collateral and you're earning 5 points on that, but you're paying 15 points on your USDT borrow position, and then you looped it up at max leverage because you thought that it was safe. Turns out it's not safe, and you can't exit the position now. And so if you're paying like 100% APY on a $100 million position, then the time to liquidation is actually quite short. So yeah, those protocols are stuck.
Because like if it's 100%, freaking, a year, you would think that it would take a year to lose everything, but it only needs to get to that liquidation threshold.
And if you used max leverage, then that liquidation threshold could bite you really, really quick. So yeah, that is not good. But it's not just those handful of protocols. It's actually quite a few. It's quite a few protocols that have seen a significant impact from this exploit. I mean, man, we could take a look and just run down the list here. Okay, so here are the two protocols. It's Yuzu Money and Avant that have these really, really big SUSDE loop positions on Aave. They're paying 90% plus borrowing APYs right now.
Is that Avantis?
No, I think it's Avant. Different. Yeah, different protocol. But so look, even Lido's rsETH Vault has Kelp rsETH exposure. A Hyperithm, which is a hyper EVM protocol, that vault, one of their vaults has $3.5 million of exposure to rsETH. Borrowers across every DeFi money market are definitely being impacted by the surge in borrowing rates. So think Morpho and Fluid, obviously of course Aave, Camino. A lot of borrowers are really getting hurt by these very, very high borrowing rates right now.
Well, that's what this post that I have up is about. USDC and USDT on Aave are pinned at 100% utilization. Lenders can't withdraw. So why is the yield only 13.5%? Under the old model, a pool hitting 100% utilization would send supply APY to 40, 60, and sometimes 80+% within minutes. That's what everyone remembers from 2022. USDT squeeze on Aave V2, rate goes vertical. Borrowers get liquidated, suppliers feast. That's not happening this time. Here's why. Aave rolled out something called the Slope 2 Risk Oracle earlier this year. Instead of rates spiking instantly when utilization pins, the curve escalates gradually based on how long the pool stays stressed. A 1 hour spike, it barely moves. 24 hour, it moves some. 72 hour, it starts to hurt. The ceiling is also lower. Stablecoin Slope 2 now targets 10 to 12%, used to be 22 to 35. So instead of panic rate explosion, you get a slow burn. Who wins from this design? Borrowers, including the attacker, still sitting on 236 million in wrapped ETH debt, paying a fraction of what they'd be paying under the old curve. Who loses? Lenders. The your pool is frozen, but at least you're earning 40% APY. Trade is dead. Now it's your pool is frozen and you're earning 13.5%. So, yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're frozen, you could pay whatever.
Frozen. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't move your assets. You're effectively stuck. So I'd rather earn 0 on an asset that I can move than,
Yeah.
10,000 bazillion% on something that I'm locked into.
No, absolutely. And welcome, Cloud9963. So let's get to the core of this. Actually, you know what? Yeah, let's get to the core of this. So it looks like where the exploit started was with layer 0, which is an oracle that is kind of like Chainlink, and Wormhole. It's allows that interoperability. So 290 million of rsETH drain wasn't a surprise. It was a layer 0 design choice coming due. Worth understanding what layer 0 actually is before assigning blame. When a token is bridged, layer 0 is what tells the destination chain, yes, this is locked on the other side. Release the wrapped version. Layer 0 secures those messages through something it calls a decentralized verifier network, or DVN. In theory, a DVN is a group of independent nodes that must all attest a cross-chain message is real before it executes. In practice, Layer 0 made a design choice. Every app gets to pick its own DVN setup, and Layer 0 enforces no minimum. An app can require 5 to 7 independent verifiers, or 2 of 3, or 1 of 1. Kelp DAO picked 1 of 1. That one was Layer 0 Labs' own node. Lazarus linked attackers then did what competent attackers do with a single point of failure. They poisoned the RPC nodes that Layer 0 Labs DVN uses to read blockchain state, fed it a fake transaction, DDoSed the clean ones so that the DVN, a DDoS is a denial of service, had no choice but to trust the poisoned feed. The DVN signed, the message looked real, 116,500 rsETH walked out in one transaction. Now look at the name. Decentralized implies no single party controls it. Layer 0 Labs controlled this one. Network implies more than one node. There was one. Verifier implies verification. A single signer isn't verification, it's a signature. Decentralized verifier network is 3 words. 0 of them were true.
I can't help but laugh, man. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's horrible.
It's insane. So, yeah, I mean, this just shows how early we are, in DeFi and in crypto. And to be honest, with the amount of liquidity that is in DeFi and on some of these platforms, I'm gonna ask the question again: why is there no automated processes that can detect these exploits? Because obviously Morpho is doing something different. Because, like David detailed weeks ago, that a lot of their people over there and institutions that are working with them started deleveraging. Either they knew it was coming, or and again, we're all about trying to paint a whole picture here. Either they knew that something was coming because they saw the the issues, or potentially they knew that the exploit was coming, or they have automated processes that saw that there was issues. Maybe it saw some on-chain data that saw that this was being set up. I don't know, but I find it very interesting that multiple organizations and Morpho all deleveraged well ahead of this. So
Me too. Me too. Well, look, I mean, if it's your job to manage risk, if that's what you do in DeFi for a living, then hey, it's your job to be on the lookout for potential problems like what happened with layer zero and with this rsETH piece of collateral. So, those guys over at RE7 and Gauntlet, they did their job.
yeah,
And that's why we've seen in that 72-hour period, as Aave has lost a third, or maybe a little bit more than a third of its total TVL, we've
yeah,
seen hundreds of millions of dollars flow into Morpho directly off of Aave. But think about the mindset shift that is taking place here. Those assets will never go back to Aave. Like Aave has permanently ruined its reputation. So
mhm,
this is a really big problem, and it's just so interesting when I look at markets, though, Mike, because ETH and Bitcoin are still up. So I didn't realize that one of the biggest exploits of the year. I think this is actually the biggest exploit of the year. I didn't realize the number go up when the biggest money market in DeFi gets
right.
effectively broken. Kind of interesting. But have you ever come across this piece of jargon, Mike? So this layer zero exploit involving Kelp DAO, it is centered on that validation logic flaw that you just read about.
Yeah.
Um, but it specifically affected omni-chain fungible tokens, OFTs. Have you ever heard that term before? That's my first time reading that term. I'd never heard that
Oh,
before. So OFTs. So yeah, verify the authenticity of mint burn signals across different chains. So layer zero was designed to be trustless by separating the oracle and the relayer, but the vulnerability targeted the endpoint verification process for rsETH. So here was the attack vector for it, something called a ghost proof. Man, the terminology here is just great. I happen to really enjoy the jargon here. So the exploit, and Mike, maybe it's a good idea, and I saw this on X earlier today. Maybe it's a good idea. You know how when you have to turn on a VPN to use a DeFi protocol, and it
yeah.
says like, "Hey, we don't support people from like North Korea, Syria, and the United States."
Mhm. And the United States.
And so you got to turn your VPN on to be able to use the protocol. Why don't they just have us sign a message that says like "fuck Kim Jong Un" and "fuck Lazarus Group"? Like you have to sign that message before you can use the protocol. That would be fun. But yeah, man, these ghost proofs. So what they did wasn't a brute force hack. It was a really sophisticated manipulation of the user application in those Kelp DAO contracts. Um, and dude, we can go through this, and I'm putting together some video content right now as we speak to be able to review this together. But man, those attackers, those hackers over in North Korea. I was thinking about this last night too, man. Like, so you don't see any video content coming out of North Korea ever, but those guys are some of the most sophisticated and successful hackers on the planet. What are they doing with all the money? Is it just they feed it back to Big Daddy Kim Jong Un,
I
and they're
guarantee.
just happy to like not be executed tomorrow? Is that how that works over there?
I guarantee that it's part of their, cyber terrorism. It's that country has been locked down as far as imports and exports. I mean, pretty much the only way that they get anything is from China, Russia, or Iran. Um, and I mean, I'm sure you've seen the satellite shots of South Korea is just lit up like a Christmas tree, because they have infrastructure and all that stuff, and North Korea is just everything is black except for basically Pyongyang, their capital city, and people that escape that place have horror stories about just starvation and people getting imprisoned for speaking out against their glorious leader, and he's a third generation if I remember right. When I was stationed over there, it was when his grandfather, the current leader's grandfather, was in power, and his grandfather died, and his father took over, and there was, I mean, we almost went to like thought we were going to war, back in the day. Um, because he wanted to bury his father in South Korea. That's another story. But this is, I think, how they fund their government is, I mean, because pretty much Lazarus Group has been behind almost every hack.
Yeah, they're prolific. It's just kind of funny because you don't see videos of, these North Korean hackers rolling down the street in Pyongyang driving a Lambo.
No,
You you don't see any of that. But yeah, I mean, this is a systemic exploit. Effectively breaking the biggest money market in DeFi. I think that we're going to be feeling the effects of this for months to come. So
yeah. And this seems to always happen, like during bear markets. What's up, Taylor?
Nothing much. What are you guys up to?
Oh, just reporting on this weekend's latest freaking DeFi hack for Aave.
Well, it's kind of weird because Bitcoin went bullish.
I know. That's what we were just talking about. We're like, the biggest lender, in DeFi, Aave, gets not directly exploited, but they lose like a third of their liquidity, and somehow Bitcoin and ETH go up. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, the one thing that kind of does scare me is this Mythos. When they came out and said, "Yeah, we got to give all the major corporations an opportunity to fix all the ability to stop all the hacking and everything." What about all these smaller guys that are, running these, crypto stuff? And is this all going to get hacked once this Mythos comes out?
I mean, honestly, I would think that they would run this Mythos on, all of TradFi, all of DeFi, government computer systems, and find all of, because basically those that don't know, Mythos is like this new AI that they came out with. And they had this announcement where we're not releasing this to the public because in a matter of like a couple of hours, it was able to find like this laundry list of vulnerabilities across very sensitive networks. So what would take like this Lazarus Group months to formulate and execute, it can do it in minutes or like an hour tops, and across the globe. So basically, what they said is they're not releasing this. So I would think that they would freaking unleash this thing to find all this stuff and maybe even have it fix it. I don't know. People are talking about quantum. Quantum obviously, it doesn't take a quantum computer, to crack a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I know it's crazy, and it's terrifying because if it is that good, then what do you do? Like the fact that you could have these North Korean basically farms running Mythos and just trying to find every vulnerable thing that's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen too.
Yeah.
And, these guys, it's not just that they're using Mythos. I mean, they seem to be some of the most brilliant hackers on the planet. Like, how is it that North Korea is able to like spawn in these brilliant hackers? Like that's just so interesting to me because what I know of North Korea is that it's essentially like, a kleptocracy, and you're just kind of lucky to survive in that state. And there are like 30 million people that live there, right?
Yeah, but that's the area that has the highest IQ per capita than any place in the world. Other than Ashkenazi Jews, North Asians have the highest IQs. And so it's like you have a million of brilliant people that have no other option other than being a slave to the North Korean government.
Right. Wow. What a resource.
Captive resource.
I know. Imagine you got a million like brilliant computer scientists who like will literally work for like a couple grains of rice. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, that is absolutely nuts.
This is something that I found today that was kind of interesting. BitcoinTreasuries.net. So I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to data. And so this actually the top 100 public Bitcoin treasury companies. So in real time, this tracks like how many Bitcoin that the top 100 hold. So you got Strategy, of course, is number one with 815,061. But there's a bunch of different data that is tracked here, that gives you an idea of what some of these organizations are doing. So it looks like in the past 30 days, it's up like 3%, and it is saying that, where is that at? It gave me a number earlier that was showing the amount of Bitcoin that is percentage wise that's held by all of these companies. I'm not able to find it right now. But well, David, you know what? Let's jump into some charts. How do you feel about that?
Sure, I'd love to jump into some charts. I've got actually a piece of content ready to rock and roll about the exploit. If you want to just run through this real quick, and then maybe we could jump into some charts. Or you want to go
Yeah,
back? Yeah,
let's do that. Let's finish out our topic. About DeFi, and then let's do some charts and talk about maybe even a little bit of stocks and things like that, because since Taylor's here. And Taylor, if you want to speak on any topics, let me know. When it comes to those that don't know, Taylor is a practicing attorney, estate law down in McKinney, Texas. Owns his own law firm, WG Law, Willingham Law. And so we usually have him on Mondays, and he talks about wealth preservation and how to structure, your wills and trusts and businesses and things like that to mitigate, what the government takes, or insulate yourself from lawsuits and things like that. So basically, all the things that the wealthy do to stay wealthy. So.
I think step number one in that process should probably be avoid DeFi money markets.
Yeah.
That's probably step one if you want to keep your wealth.
Yes.
So, $292 million stolen. But here's the interesting thing. $15 billion of total value evaporated. Poof, gone. And it's gone. Yeah, horrible. So this is proving to be the ultimate test of DeFi composability. So, wow, check this out. A localized infrastructure breach triggered a $15 billion macroeconomic shockwave throughout all of DeFi. And so, if I'm tracking DeFi TVL over on, a protocol like DeFi Llama, let's say, total value locked in DeFi hitting 85 billion now. We were just a couple of days ago up around 100 billion in DeFi TVL. So this breach event, we've seen, a 13.2 billion, closer to 15 billion in DeFi TVL just evaporate. So what was the breach? It was 116,000 rsETH were illicitly minted. That's the Lazarus group, the North Korean hackers. They were able to pull that off using that layer 0 bridge exploit. $236 million in pristine wrapped ETH was drained from Aave. So the rsETH and then the drain of the wrapped ETH, that created all that bad debt. So $196 million in toxic, unrecoverable bad debt stranded on Aave. And you might think, well, Aave was a $27 billion, nearly a $30 billion protocol prior to this event. Why would it be that $196 million in toxic bad debt essentially froze that money market? Well, because it needs to be socialized across all of the depositors on the money market. And so that led to the utilization rates going to 100% as people rushed for the exits. If you can't withdraw your collateral because utilization is at 100%, but what you can do is borrow stables against it, that's exactly what people did. They borrowed stables, and then that sent the utilization rates in the stablecoin markets on Aave to 100%. And so the entire protocol has essentially frozen, and they've got to figure out what to do with this $196 million in bad debt. Their insurance protocol is only $50 million. So there's still a $150 million hole. And we've already seen greater than $10 billion in capital flight from Aave. So this has been a really, really big deal. Okay, the compounding fragility of this LRT stack, so this liquid restaking stack. So layer one, you've got that Ethereum mainnet with the consensus security, right? And then built on top of that, you've got EigenLayer. I don't recall what AVS stands for again, but we can definitely look that up.
I'll look it up.
And then on top of EigenLayer, you've got all of these LRTs. Okay, and so what they do is these recursive derivatives like Kelp DAO rsETH. They implicitly underwrite the operational integrity of the entire stack. So if Kelp DAO goes bust, well, then all the money markets that had exposure to it, they've got a problem. And it looks like Kelp DAO is going to have to take a 20% haircut. That's what it looks like. But you've got to ask yourself now, how secure is this LRT and LST layer in the first place? Maybe not the LSTs, but the LRTs. The LRTs are like a rehypothecation of the LST, borrowing Ethereum mainnet's security layer. So you've got to just ask yourself now.
So real quick, AVS is actively validated service delegation. It's the mechanism that connects capital providers or restakers with the technical entities that perform work to secure a decentralized services.
Right. So they basically use, the security layer from the LSTs again in the LRTs. And then they delegate that as a service. So they're like basically selling that security as a service with the LRTs to other protocols. It's kind of like, have you ever seen that Jenga tower image where you've got all sorts of stuff built on top of this big Jenga tower, and then on the bottom there's like this one little piece that's holding it all up, and that little piece is really fragile? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a little bit of a problem, and we're seeing that in action now. So $1 billion asset secured by a single point of failure. So that multi-DVN configuration, well, that's not what Kelp DAO used. And so, Mike, that's what you were reading about earlier, that layer zero labs DVN, that it was not decentralized. There was no verification, and there weren't nodes. It wasn't a network. Yeah. So there's one node that's not a network. So this vulnerable configuration is what the attackers exploited. So there were zero smart contract bugs were exploited. The breach was a conscious deployment configuration choice. It was a problem in the architecture that Layer Zero Labs used. So traditional security audits, they're going to scan the Solidity files for bugs in the logic, but they entirely missed the external configuration fragility. You know who didn't miss that fragility though? The profession, right? Exactly. The professional risk managers over at Morpho, they didn't miss this. Yeah, and it says here, an open source AI auditing tool flagged this exact one-of-one configuration risk 12 days prior to the attack. And so remember what I was saying about how RE7 and Gauntlet, they took action 12 days prior to the attack? Well, maybe it was because of this AI auditing tool flagging the risk.
Well, and that's what I've been talking about on social media all this morning is, why is it that, these protocols like Aave that have billions and billions of dollars of people's liquidity, why do they have manual circuit breakers that from what I'm reading, took them like 46 minutes before they flipped the switch to cut this off? Whereas it appears that, Morpho and, RS7 Labs and, a lot of these other organizations have AI tools that are constantly scanning for this stuff and front running it and protecting their liquidity.
Yeah, well, Aave made a big boo-boo by pushing for V4 so hard that the V3 team left, and then their risk manager, Chaos Labs, the main one, left too. So that not good. So here's the architecture of the exploit. So step one, the attackers compromised the RPC node. So they gained root access to two independent RPCs nodes that were serving that DVN, right? That's that layer 0 DVN, and then injected malware. So a legitimate OP-GET8 client binaries were replaced with custom malware designed to fabricate transaction data. And then they used denial of service attacks. So a massive DDoS attack paralyzed the healthy nodes, which forced the load balancers to route all the validation traffic exclusively to the two poisoned nodes. And then message forgery. So the single DVN ingested fabricated data and then signed a forged cross-chain message. That's that what was it called? OFT, omni-chain fungible token. Yep. Instructing mainnet to mint 116,500 unbacked rsETH. Wow. So, brilliant.
Well, they basically did what the U.S. government does, with printing money. They just basically printed, rsETH, fake rsETH, and then cashed out.
Yeah, no kidding, man. And just taking a look, the threat actor was the Lazarus Group. So these guys have been behind a lot of the attacks this year, and just in general too. So weaponizing composability through aggressive capital efficiency parameters. Okay, so this is a little bit about Aave. So this Aave proposal 434 from January 2026 aggressively raised rsETH LTVs to 93% via E mode.
So they did the opposite of what Morpho did.
Yeah.
They instead of de-risking, they like up the risk.
They dialed it up. And the difference is on Aave, everything's pooled. On Morpho, everything is isolated. So, if
to really make sure that people understand that Aave is just one big bucket of liquidity. If somebody finds an exploit, they have access to all the liquidity, whereas Morpho has buckets. Everything's separated out into buckets, not a barrel. Everything's separated out into buckets. So if one is exploited, it doesn't affect all of them. They're limited to that one bucket.
That's a pretty good way of thinking about it. And, so here's the thing. Even if on Morpho, the curators had increased the LTVs in an rsETH market to 93%, that still would not have generated contagion in the same way that this has generated contagion because of Aave's architecture.
It just would have affected that one bucket, not the whole barrel.
Exactly. So this was the execution from the attacker. So Lazarus, they deposited that 117K of worthless rsETH, and they were instantly able to borrow $236 million of wrapped ETH against it. And so they just abandoned their toxic collateral and walked away. So that left the protocol holding the bag. And Oracle lag paralyzed these liquidation engines. So this is what you were talking about, Mike, with some type of automated stopgap measure. So the Oracle lag paralyzed the liquidation engines, creating 196 million in permanent bad debt. Wow. So once the market realized the rsETH was unbacked by EigenLayer, its true value evaporated. Aave's programmatic liquidation bots failed to intervene because no rational economic actor will purchase an asset whose fundamental value is zero, regardless of the algorithmic discount, unless they're trying to steal from you, of course. And so the result was $196 million in toxic, unliquidatable bad debt stranded on Aave v3. Wow. And so, I'm pretty sure that Morpho actually may have seen inflows as a result. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward from that slide. The anatomy of sector-wide liquidity crisis. Oh yeah, so this 100% utilization doom loop. And we can actually see that in practice, Mike. If we hop on over here to Aave right now, imagine you are one of the depositors in this Ethereum market that I'm highlighting here on Aave v3 on mainnet. a $5.8 billion market, and it's got $15 of liquidity.
Oh, well, there was 17, so it looks like somebody got like $3 out.
I mean, somebody was able to get $3.
Yeah.
And it says this asset is frozen due to an Aave community decision. So, what community do you speak of? Like, what is this community? Because I'm pretty sure the community is just Aave stakers, of which isn't the team or Stani, like, isn't that really the Aave community at the end of the day? Yeah. And so if we scroll down here, here's the interest rate model, 100% utilization. This market is frozen. Not only is it frozen by governance, but at 100% utilization, anyone who is borrowing this thing is paying 5.13%. So let's just go back here. That's for the ETH market. What if you're stuck in that ETH market and the only way you could exit is to borrow Tether or USDC against it? Well, you're going to be stuck paying 15%. And even the Tether market, with 2.6 billion in reserve size, it's got 25K of available liquidity. So it's completely frozen too at 100% utilization. And so imagine if you are supplying something like SUSDE, that piece of collateral that Avant and Yuzu Money is supplying over here on Aave. Imagine if you're supplying that piece of collateral. We can just go back and take a look at that real quick. So SUSDE, here's USDE, here's SUSDE. Imagine if you're supplying this thing, right? Staked USDE. It says 0% is your supply APY. It's got intrinsic yield of, I want to say, like, let's be generous. Let's call it 5%. I don't think it's as high as 5%. Let's just, call it 5% for the sake of this discussion. You're supplying SUSDE at 5%. And then all of a sudden you're borrowing. No, you go in and you want to loop it. So your collateral's paying you 5%. And then you go in, and up until recently, you were able to borrow, USDT at 3.33%. So if you're earning 5% on your collateral and paying 3.3% on your borrow position, and you've got 97, or let's call it 93% max LTV, you can loop that up like 8 times, like 8x. So if you're earning 5 points on your supply and paying 3 points on your borrow, then you got a nice little interest rate arbitrage there if you loop that up a bunch of times. But what happens if suddenly the borrow APY that you're paying goes from 3 points to 15 points, and you're running 8x leverage? Well, multiply 8 by 15% and then subtract from that number 8 times whatever you're earning on your collateral.
You're close to 100%.
You're running a negative 100% interest rate arb. And I'm pretty sure that there are a couple of really, really big players doing that, like to the tune of a 9-figure position. So like, imagine you're running a 9-figure negative 100% interest rate arb that you can't exit. It's just totally screwed. And, I don't know what the next step is going to be for the Aave DAO. Hasn't it been basically radio silence from them? Like, what?
Let me check their socials, but I haven't seen anything. I mean, I've been doing research on this all morning, and I haven't seen any announcements from them. It's like they've gone dark.
Yeah, man, it's just such a crazy thing to have happen so quickly. But yeah, I mean, I want to bring it back on over here to the slide deck and just finish this up real quick. So let's just go through, this doom loop. So here's the trigger. So ambiguity over who absorbs this $200 million Aave loss sparks this withdraw first, ask questions later panic. So everyone rushes to the exit. The mega whales exit instantly. For example, Justin Sun was able to withdraw 65,000 ETH in a single transaction. Wow. Okay, and so that contraction, so total available liquidity shrinks as a result of that, pushing the utilization rate mathematically to 100%. And then the market gets paralyzed. So borrowing costs skyrocket. There's zero idle liquidity remaining any longer. legitimate depositors are paralyzed and unable to withdraw their funds, which triggers forced liquidation cascades. So yeah, this is really, really not good. Okay.
So really quick, the last two posts is Stani, the CEO, posted on the 18th, so Saturday when this all happened. rsETH has been frozen on Aave V3 and V4. The asset does not have any borrowing power as a measure due to Kelp DAO bridge exploit that happened outside of Aave. And then there was 22 hours ago was the last one, update on rsETH incident. According to our analysis, rsETH on Ethereum mainnet is fully backed.
But that's not true.
I know. Out of an abundance of caution, rsETH remains frozen across Aave V3 and V4, and exposure to the incident is capped. Wrapped ETH reserves also remain frozen across affected markets, including Ethereum, Arbitrum, Base, Mantle, and Linea. Aave is actively validating information and assessing potential resolutions. I don't think that passes the smell test 100%.
That doesn't do it for me either. Imagine if you've got, your life savings on Aave, as I did just a couple of days ago. I got out before this happened. I got lucky because, Mike, we did all the work.
Yeah.
We did all the research on this.
We did a deep dive 12 days ago, and when we did that deep dive, both of us were like, it might be a good time to get liquidity off of Aave. You got to respect the liquidity.
Respect the liquidity. Yeah, no kidding, man. So yeah, let's take a look at all of these different tranches. So first, loss protection. So the localized wrapped ETH pool reserves immediately offset the initial impact. So anyone who's stuck in that wrapped ETH, vault, they're going to be stuck absorbing some of these losses, it looks like. And then tranche two, so this umbrella vault, that's the insurance vault. You're going to see automated slashing of yield-seeking wrapped ETH stakers. No governance vote required. Oh, man. And then here's tranche three. This is so funny because the staked Aave holders are the ones who are going to have to vote on whether or not they get slashed in order to repay this bad debt. So the very people who would incur losses are the ones who will have to vote on that governance proposal. So they're the backstop of last resort. It requires a formal governance vote to slash protocol level governance token stakers. Wow. And then tranche four, depositor haircuts. So this is the doomsday scenario. Losses are socialized onto legitimate users. The DAO treasury intervention is required to avoid this blow to institutional trust. Wow. Well, I think the blow to institutional trust has already happened and there's no going back now. Wow, man. So technical resolution stalled by internal governance gridlock and leadership vacuum. So here's the vacuum. And we were talking about this weeks ago, Mike. Chaos Labs, Aave's premier risk manager, severed ties on April 6th. What was that? 2 weeks ago? Citing strategic differences. So this left a critical risk assessment void just 12 days before the massive attack. Wow. Okay, so that's the power vacuum. And then here's the political gridlock. Aave Labs' recent proposal for $51 million in new funding met fierce opposition from the Aave Chan Initiative. Remember, they exited, demanding cost transparency and pointing out the previous $86 million capital injection. So they wanted Aave Chan Initiative. It seems to me like they wanted Aave to spend more money than they were proposing to spend on security, and risk management. And Aave refused to spend the money, and look at what happened. So here's the strategic.
The figures. There's figures on that. So currently, Aave only spends 2% of revenue on security. To put it into perspective, banks and institutions usually allocate 6 to 10%. So what Chaos Labs was asking for was basically 4%, which is, technically speaking, across the industry, is still much less than the 6 to 10 that these traditional finance and banks, they allocate. So I don't personally think that they were asking for anything ridiculous because they were potentially greater than doubling their workload from just V3 to both V3 and V4 with, all the additional aspects of V4, like hooks, or not hooks, sorry. All these, different aspects of, that they're going to have to, basically, secure, Aave, Aave from. So I don't know. It just, that, weeks ago, that's what really sent up the red flags for me, and made me think about making sure that I didn't have any liquidity on there, and kind of putting the warning out to our community.
So check this out, though. This is the real threat. It's the threat to reputation. And, reputation it takes years to build, but can vanish in an instant, right? And so as the Aave DAO is arguing over treasury allocations and staked Aave slashing, this unresolved $200 million piece of toxic debt threatens to permanently drive institutional capital to more resilient competitors. I would not describe Sky and Compound as resilient competitors. I would describe Morpho as a resilient competitor, however. So yeah, this is not a good look for DeFi. And look, this is Aave B3, the legacy shared liquidity model. So the exploit happened just on one of the pieces of this mixed asset pool, but it was enough to break the entire thing. And so what Aave wants to move towards in Aave V4 is this model, this hub and spoke model, which potentially maybe could have isolated this risk a little bit better. But again, it would have required having a legit risk manager on your team, and their risk manager left. So kind of difficult there. This hyper leveraged restaking narrative. Oh man. So this is what you were talking about earlier, Mike, with the RE or rsETH, these actively validated services, the LRTs, what they do, they provide AVSs, I think. But it seems like it doesn't adequately compensate for the exponential tail risks of bridge and configuration failures, which is what we just witnessed.
Yeah.
So it looks like TVL is going to permanently rotate away from these types of derivative products and back to, collateral like ETH itself, or stable coins, or, Bitcoin, but not W.
Basically away from wrapped versions. And that's kind of, and to take this to Bitcoin, a lot of this Bitcoin native DeFi, like we're talking about Amboss. We're going to be doing an interview, I believe next week, with the CEO of Amboss. It's, this potentially, and not saying that it's going to happen, but any wrapped versions of ETH or Bitcoin or any other tokens have the potential for something like this to happen, an exploit, because of that messaging service, that, cross-chain messaging service that says, hey, this is locked, on this side, this actual native token is locked on this side. So it's okay to release this wrapped version because it's backed by this over here. And that's what happened with this. So, I think that, this is going to, in my opinion, help, with native DeFi on Bitcoin mainnet.
I would love to see that. I would love to see, real true DeFi on Bitcoin and on the layer one. It looks as though, and we were talking about this last week, Mike, we were talking about how you really need covenants on layer one for there to be true DeFi on layer one. And there's a couple of Bitcoin improvement proposals that would enable essentially covenants, which would allow you to create kind of like the Bitcoin layer one version of smart contracts. So it doesn't look like that is a reality yet, but hopefully soon. Now, Mike, I've got a piece of video content about this 48-hour, $10 billion DeFi collapse. You want to play this? This will be, I think it's 7 minutes long, and then we can run through some charts through the end of the session today. What do you think?
Love it.
This chart.
Let me know if you can hear it.
Can hear it.
Tracks the total value locked across decentralized finance between April 18th and April 20th, 2026. In 48 hours, the ecosystem lost $10 billion, leaving behind a $196 million block of unrecoverable bad debt. The panic hit Aave v3 hardest. In roughly 2 days, depositors pulled over $5.4 billion in Ethereum out of the protocol's smart contracts. But here is the paradox. Aave's smart contracts executed exactly as they were written. There were no logic failures, no integer overflows, and no cryptographic bypasses. Security audits generally focus on flaws in the source code, but the root cause here was an off-chain infrastructure failure that trickled directly into on-chain financial logic. The breach is formally attributed to the Lazarus Group.
Look at that. So you see this pyramid hotel thing? Mike, have you ever seen any of the documentaries about Pyongyang where Westerners go there and they take a look at this hotel?
No.
This one. So this hotel, man, there's nothing there. It's just a shell. It's not real. Or at least the last video I saw of it was just a concrete shell.
It's all propaganda. It's just North Korea tries to look like that it's prosperous and stuff like that.
Oh man.
A North Korean state-sponsored collective operating under their long-running Trader campaign. This group is known for extreme operational patience. In previous attacks, they spent months infiltrating developer teams to slowly map out cross-chain infrastructure. By compromising traditional web servers rather than cracking encryption, the attackers bypassed decentralized consensus. They executed the largest financial extraction of 2026 by weaponizing data that feeds isolated liquidity pools. The exploit began far away from the Ethereum mainnet, targeting the server architecture that supported the Kelp DAO bridge. Applications interact with blockchains through remote procedure call, or RPC nodes. These servers act as the bridge between off-chain applications and on-chain state data. The Lazarus Group gained root access to 2 independent RPC nodes that routed data to the Layer 0 network. At this stage, the blockchain itself was untouched. Once they had access, they removed the legitimate server software and replaced it with malicious engines. These custom binaries are engineered to intercept legitimate blockchain queries and return completely fabricated transaction data. Owning 2 poisoned nodes is useless if the system pulls data from hundreds of healthy servers. To solve this, attackers launched a distributed denial of service attack on the healthy nodes. Automatic load balancing redirected all validation traffic to the only nodes that responded, the Lazarus Group's nodes. They didn't have to break cryptographic encryption. They just poisoned the data before it reached the consensus layer. The poisoned nodes now fed fabricated state data directly into Kelp DAO's specific decentralized verifier network. Here is the structural flaw. Despite holding over $1 billion, Kelp DAO developers chose a one-of-one configuration. They reduced the security of a multi-chain asset to the authority of a single validation pathway. An open-source AI tool flagged this exact risk 12 days prior, but the warning was ignored. Because there was no secondary
So did you hear that part, Mike? So that an open source AI auditing tool flagged this risk 12 days before the exploit, and RE7 Labs took action and froze the rsETH market on Morpho.
And I can't stress this enough. I mean, this is what I've been talking about all morning on social media. Is why is it that these automated, that Aave, the largest lender, and I'm not trying to fut out, I'm just pointing out facts. Aave is the largest lender, borrowing lending platform in DeFi. And how is it that they have not put into place where, David was talking about, where it's one big pool of liquidity? Why have they not set up these buckets to insulate, to mitigate, exposure to all the liquidity? And why haven't they implemented any automated circuit breakers that can trip automatically and doesn't take a manual process that in this case took them 45 minutes or more to basically lock everything down? And by that point they had already gotten away with almost $300 million.
Yeah, well, because their risk manager and engineering team were, locked in a dispute with Aave management about getting paid what they're worth, and so they left.
To be fair, a lot of these things should have been in place long ago.
Yeah.
The dev teams and stuff like that should have, segregated the different buckets of liquidity. That should have been part of the architecture. The automated processes and the risk management, should have been in place long ago. It's just Aave is way too big of a platform to not have understood and known about the potential of something like this. I personally, my personal opinion, I see it as negligence.
I do too. These guys, they should have been doing their job, and obviously they didn't. But the fact that there were other protocols who saw the writing on the wall and took action before they got infected with this bad debt, that just tells you that this could have been avoided, because there were some protocols that were able to avoid it. Think Morpho, because of those risk curators, Gauntlet and rsETH. They saw this, they took action prior to the exploit, and it saved their depositors. So if only Aave and Layer Zero had, taken some action here.
You think this Korean group probably read the paper about the issue and then executed it? Which is like, oh, okay, you could do this, and then they. But okay,
maybe.
So if you're running a crypto, anything, if any of these things come out, you better act immediately, because the hackers are looking at it too.
Yeah, that's actually a valid point. Maybe they were like, "Oh shit, okay, thanks, guys."
Yeah, thanks for giving it to us.
Yeah.
I mean, those hackers, man, they are professionals. I gotta at least say that.
But with AI now, like, you got to think beforehand how long it would have taken to code something like this. Like,
well,
it would have taken months and months, and they would probably have it fixed. But now things move so quickly. If you're a major company, you got to jump on it immediately. You can't wait.
No, you can't. And imagine if you're the exploiter and you've got a team. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually wanted to look this up to be sure. Not to say, I mean, this obviously is an rsETH issue, but like I said, we're all about transparency here. We're all about stating all the facts. As bullish as I am on Canton Network, I got to point out external interoperability. Canton Network does use Layer 0. As of March 2025, the Canton Network expanded its reach to the broader crypto ecosystem by integrating Layer 0. So, put that little piece of knowledge, do with it as you will. I know that they have other things that they do use, but I want to make sure that we're fully transparent here. And Canton Network does use Layer 0. So,
well. Layer Zero's got some splaining to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Verifier to cross-reference the data, the solitary node greenlit the forged transaction. The Kelp DAO adapter received this forged signal and unilaterally instructed the Ethereum mainnet to mint 116,500 unbacked rsETH tokens. The attackers moved the funds through privacy protocols to convert the stolen tokens into native Ethereum, making them nearly impossible for law enforcement to freeze. Deterministic code will execute a catastrophic command if the underlying configuration eliminates the need for multi-party consensus. The attackers now held 116,500 unbacked tokens. But selling them on decentralized exchanges would trigger massive slippage, destroying their value. Instead, they chose to launder the tokens by weaponizing them as collateral on Aave v3. Aave features a high-efficiency mode, or E mode, designed for assets that are mathematically correlated. Since rsETH is tied to Ethereum, the protocol assumes their prices move in tandem. A recent governance proposal had raised the maximum loan-to-value ratio for rsETH to 93%, leaving the protocol with a razor-thin 7% margin for error. This adjustment was active just as Aave's risk management provider, Chaos Labs, ended its collaboration with the DAO, leaving a gap in real-time oversight.
So hold on a second. So we got to go back through this. So in that specific market, the LTV was increased via a governance vote to 93%, which effectively meant that the attacker was able to realize 93% of their exploit simply by borrowing ETH against that rsETH.
So by raising the loan to value, they actually helped the hackers,
Yes,
to get away with.
Right, unintentionally, of course,
Yeah.
but they
Oh,
did.
yeah.
And this happened at the same time that the risk manager, the main risk manager, Chaos Labs, decides to end its collaboration with the Aave DAO.
Yeah.
Man.
Management provider Chaos Labs ended its collaboration with the DAO, leaving a gap in real-time oversight. Aave's smart contracts rely on pricing oracles, like Chainlink, to determine what an asset is worth. Because the exploit had just occurred, oracles had not registered the insolvency, continuing to report rsETH trading at its peg. Aave's contracts blindly read this lagging data and treated the toxic tokens as pristine collateral. Working entirely within the protocol's approved parameters, the attackers borrowed and withdrew $236 million in liquid-wrapped Ethereum. Highly aggressive lending parameters acted as a hyper-accelerant, allowing the attackers to convert unbacked derivatives into hard liquid assets.
Wow.
As the news spread, the market realized the tokens were
Okay, so did you just hear that last word, unbacked derivatives? What did Aave say on X about rsETH? Remember what they said about rsETH? Didn't Aave say, our analysis says that rsETH is fully backed?
Yeah.
How can rsETH be fully backed if an attacker essentially minted 20% of the entire supply of rsETH out of thin air?
Of counterfeit
Right.
rsETH. Unless they inject, like say it's $300 million worth of fake rsETH, unless they have $300 million to inject of liquidity to inject, it's not backed.
Right. So rsETH cannot be fully backed because it just took a 20% hit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Aave's lawyers are going to have a hard time explaining that one to, to creditors at some point in the future, I'm sure.
unbacked. The value of rsETH instantly collapsed. Normally, liquidation bots would buy the discounted collateral to repay the debt, but because the asset was worthless, the bots refused to buy it.
Right.
Aave was left holding $196 million in bad debt. The realization that the largest lender in DeFi had a massive hole in its balance sheet triggered an immediate crisis of confidence. Institutional whales began to exit. Justin Sun alone withdrew over 65,000 ETH in a single transaction. As billions in supplied ETH fled, the pool's utilization rate spiked, hitting an absolute maximum of 100%. At this level, zero idle liquidity remains. Late depositors found themselves entirely unable to withdraw their funds. Absorbing this bad debt guaranteed a bank run, trapping remaining users, and breaking the core utility of the protocol. To contain the damage, Aave risk stewards manually froze all rsETH markets to prevent further borrowing. The protocol then activated its Umbrella safety module, which programmatically slashed specific vault stakers to cover the first tranche of the debt. But the remaining deficit required a formal governance vote to slash the broader staked Aave backstop, a move that triggered intense gridlock within the DAO.
Right. So why? Why does it trigger, gridlock in the DAO? Well, because the staked Aave holders are the same people that are going to have to vote on the proposal that would see their staked Aave potentially get slashed to pay for this bad debt. So they don't exactly have much of an incentive to go out there and vote against their own best interests. So this is kind of a clusterfuck, I think is the right word for this.
Industry response was immediate. Layer 0 now refuses to attest messages for any protocol operating on a one-of-one validation setup. Lending protocols are moving toward LTV0 classifications, which prevent complex derivatives from being used as collateral outside of very specific, isolated environments. Future designs like Aave v4 replace shared pools with a singleton architecture, supporting experimental assets in compartmentalized spokes without risking the core hub. Automated risk engines replace slow governance votes, instantly isolating an asset the moment it deviates from its peg. The era of assuming unrestricted composability is safe has ended. The ecosystem is now prioritizing architectural isolation and real-time risk management over aggressive capital efficiency.
Right. So which are the protocols that, have this isolated architecture? There's a couple of them. We can take a look at them right now if you'd like. It's Morpho and Euler. These are the two protocols that prioritize risk management, I guess you could say. So if we just take a look real quick at Aave, and we just take a look at Aave and we go back, and this is the main market. This is the main market here. And now if we scroll down all the way to the bottom here, and then we click on show frozen or paused assets, well, here we go. rsETH, there's the market. If we go ahead and click through into this one, $1.3 billion in reserve size, zero available liquidity.
Oh, somebody got the rest of it out.
Yeah, this is a different one. This is the rsETH one. If we go back and then we just take a look at the ETH market, this is, if you deposited into this Ethereum market on mainnet, on Aave, this was considered to be one of the safest ways to earn yield on your ETH, was deposit it on mainnet, on Aave, on V3. This was considered one of the lowest risk ways to earn yield on your ETH, but now there's $5.8 billion stuck here and $15 of available liquidity, and the market is frozen. So you're completely SOL if you're holding ETH here on Aave. Not good, not good. If we sort by total supplied assets here, you've got wrapped EtherFi ETH, that's WEETH. You've got Lido wrapped staked ETH. These are both LRTs, just like the Kelp DAO LRT rsETH. These are both LRTs. But then if you take a look down the list, you've got, the Tether market completely, basically paralyzed because you've got 2.6 billion in supplies.
Real quick, LRTs is liquid restaking token.
Yes. Yep. So, these big markets are essentially frozen. The Tether market's frozen. The Circle market's essentially frozen. If we take a look maybe at a different chain, let's take a look at some of the layer twos like Base.
That's just on Aave. Just to,
right.
Not like across everything. It's like everything's not frozen.
No. Just on Aave, but it's having cascading effects. It's just so strange to see ETH plus 2.25% on the session. If we take a look over here on the Base chain, let's just see on Base, frozen, or wow, even on Base, the ETH market is frozen on Base. Wow. So it's cascading down the layer twos, because I don't think this was affected necessarily. This ETH market here, I think it could have just been on mainnet. If we take a look at Arbitrum, here's Arbitrum, the Arbitrum chain. If we go ahead and scroll down, and again, there it is.
On Base, those ones that are frozen might just be, an automation, to mitigate, to make sure that, that the liquidity there doesn't get exploited.
Liquidity is gone. You take a look at Mantle, another layer 2, and wrapped ETH frozen here also. So yeah, it seems as though all of the ETH markets are basically frozen. What about Plasma, I wonder? And wrapped, Lido wrapped, there's no liquidity here though. So, but you don't really need ETH. But the wrapped ETH market here on Plasma looks like maybe it's not completely frozen, is it? No, it is 100% utilization. Wow, man. So Aave is completely broken. It is completely broken right now. And, do we see some type of a governance proposal to resolve this coming from the team at Aave.
Do we see any like posts? I mean, like I said on X, they what was it? They 22 hours ago was the last peep we heard out of their official X account, and the 18th was the last time you heard from Stani.
So what? Just radio silence is the way to go for them now? Like what's going on with that? That's not.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's not. In my opinion, that's not acceptable. They need to be out there, at the very least, making it clear and communicating what their plan for a governance proposal is to resolve this problem, because
Absolutely.
all of these markets are frozen. This is the biggest money market in DeFi, completely broken right now. And if we take a look over here at some charts, Bitcoin's railing, and so is ETH.
So yeah, we got 10 minutes left. Let's go over some charts, and I definitely want to get Taylor's take on this.
Yeah, so I mean, if I just run through some charts real quick, so this pattern out of Bitcoin, we did hit some resistance on Friday, backed away over the weekend, sitting at 75.9 right here on BTC. This remains a bearish pattern. This is a bear flag, and we are still in a Bitcoin bear market. So rallies are for selling, I think. If we take a look at Ethereum, Ethereum likes to put in an interesting pattern here. If I just go ahead and remove this vertical line there and just go ahead and point this out, where we break out above a level of trendline resistance, retest it, and depending on the market regime, in a bearish trend, I would expect the retest to fail. Currently, ETH is bouncing on the retest of support. So that is actually, looking a little bit more positive for ETH here. I just don't see how ETH is going to be able to push higher in the face of the largest money market in DeFi essentially blowing up. Yeah, I don't know. I would sell this rally. And then Solana, you take a look at Solana here, basically has just painted a flag and moved sideways ever since the beginning of February, with resistance above at $97. So, the majors, Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol, just in an uptrend, a counter trend rally, a bear market rally. But then if we take a look at the S&P and equities, this has been a historic rally, straight up here. And, here's the thing, a lot of those tailwinds that have helped push this market up, all those CTAs that have been forced buyers over the last couple of weeks, those tailwinds may be fading, and the S&P is sitting at trendline resistance. So let's see what happens. But if we take a look just real quick at crude oil, this was one of the catalysts for the correction, and of course now also one of the catalysts for the big pump out of equities. Crude sitting at $87. The forwards say that by the end of the year, crude is in the mid 70s. So yeah, if I take a look here just real quick at rates, rates have been flagging off here. So if rates push a little bit higher, that would tell me that inflation expectations are also pushing higher. But we're really, although the last CPI print, I think, came in hot, the way that it was explained away was that it wasn't quite as hot as expectations. And so even though it came in hot, it wasn't as hot as people feared it would be. And so that ended up being a good thing. Make that make sense. So yeah, digital asset markets are, I think, going to come under pressure in the coming days. I just don't see how number can go up when the biggest DeFi money market blows up. So that's what I got there. Yeah, this is going to be an exciting week.
Yeah, it is. So Taylor, I mean, you've kind of, I know that you do a little, definitely more than a little investing in traditional markets and in crypto and stuff like that. So after kind of listening to the breakdown, of what David presented, I mean, kind of what are your thoughts?
Well, currently Bitcoin, it signaled going bullish in the sense of entering a stage. And so I'm really actually shocked based upon what's going on globally that the markets don't seem to care. They don't seem to care that, we're like oil's going down, which oil going down in the fact that one of the major marketing, the major oil distributors of the world is basically about to be blown up. It's something that just is like, okay, well, how does this make sense in reality? And then you got exactly what's happening, ETH market today, and it doesn't seem to be affected at all. It's a very weird what's going on. It almost feels like these markets are fake, like they don't actually reflect reality of what's going on. And that might really be that institutions control all this so much that the institutions decide when it goes up and when it goes down. And because they hold so much of the wealth in crypto and different things. And, usually when you have a horrific things like this in the next couple of days, if ETH continues to go up, that's an incredibly bullish sign, because if, the fear alone should drive money out, but there might just be so much wealth held in these institutions that they go, we don't care. We've decided it's bullish now. And we're all beholden to whenever they do. So like Jeff, right now, he hasn't been on for a while, but he's created a model basically using momentum investing. And he's created a current model that he's back tested to 2020 that makes average 150% a year in traditional markets return. And it's insane, but it's basically using momentum investing. It's basically you wait for the institutions to decide when things go up, and then you get it. And then when things turn, you get out. And it seems like there's some kind of game going on behind the scenes that doesn't reflect reality. Because I remember back in the day, you had anything of a global war happening, market changed the next day.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it doesn't seem like it affects it anymore. It's very fascinating to watch it.
Yeah, Taylor, I think markets are fundamentally different post 2008, simply because now you've got this lender of last resort that seems to be in there every single month, the Federal Reserve. So markets, and if you take a look at the chart, like if we just take a look at like a chart of the S&P cash index over the last, call it the last 15 years, if we just zoom out on the S&P cash over the last 15 years, the era of free money via the Fed, it's pretty clear. You can see when that era began right there, March 2009, and look at the parabola.
Oh, we don't see it.
Oh, let me just go ahead and
I'm trying that, but it's not one freaking.
Here, let me try. How about now? Nope. Okay, let me stop the screen share, and then I'll just try it one more time here. But markets are fundamentally different than they were prior to 2009, because now you've got this bazooka money printer that will step in the moment there's any type of weakness. So there we go. So you see that is not a meme coin. That's the S&P 500. And, this is a monthly chart, but if I just go ahead and mark 2009, there it is right there. There's 2009. So, what changed since 2009? Well, money printer go burr. That's what changed. So, yeah. So why aren't these markets reacting to what is clearly, not a good headline event? Well, maybe because the only thing that matters is liquidity. And even in the face of $15 billion evaporating over the course of 72 hours, even with that, maybe there's just more of a bid underneath these markets than that. Maybe there's still a bid. Obviously, there's still a bid here. But
one thing I'm very interested in is that number of like what percentage of Bitcoin is controlled by institutions.
That's what I was trying to bring up when I found that one Bitcoin .net website. It wasn't as much as you would think. I mean, it was actually only like 4% or something like that.
Really? That's crazy.
Let me see if I can find that.
Just because like you think of how much master buys that they would control more than 4%.
I think they've got a couple points of the entire supply. I don't know how many though. But yeah, here's MicroStrategy. Nice breakout and a gap up. So just there's plenty of room for MSTR to run a little bit until it gets to 200-day moving average resistance above. But this is really going to be determined by what Bitcoin does. So yeah,
so
it's
it says what private companies own 290,000 Bitcoin of the 21 potential million.
Okay.
So what would that be percentage wise? 300,000 of 21 million.
Only 300,000. How much is master?
Oh no, it's more than 300,000 because fucking Strategy owns 815,061.
So I thought.
So what are we looking at here? Oh, okay. Sorry. Hold on. So we got private companies own 300,000, government entities own 650,000, ETFs and exchanges 1,630,400, and DeFi and other is 380,000. So actually, let me take a screenshot of this before we end the show. And let me throw that into here. What is the total BTC from this, and what percent is that from the 21 million supply? Let's see what it has to say.
Because I've
20%. So it says 19.81%.
That's a powerful control, but not as much as I thought.
Yeah. So I mean, it goes to show you, and that's there's a decent amount of Bitcoin that's hasn't been mined yet, and then there's a bunch of Bitcoin in Satoshi's wallet and a bunch of legacy wallets, people that have either sent it into oblivion or gotten locked out of it. So take it with a somewhat grain of salt, but a good swag number would be probably 70% is in retail's hands.
Yeah.
So
that's a good thing. Good thing to have retail holding Bitcoin rather than the majority of it distributed amongst institutions.
Well, guys, I gotta get to the next week, but this was a fascinating episode. You guys did fantastic, very informative, and I hope that you guys can get this out to a lot of people that have their money, held by. I feel really bad for people. I mean, that they trusted this organization to handle it, and clearly was not run by competent people that should have known better. And so, great job, guys. I think you guys. And if you're a crypto guy, these guys warned you. They knew that they told you a few days ago. So if you're going to be a crypto investor, you apparently need to be watching this show because you guys were on top of it and knew what was going on.
Well, appreciate it, Taylor. Have a good day. Let me know what you think of those emails I sent you.
Oh, I will.
All right. Take care. Well, that's our show for today. You got any closing thoughts, David? Or
no, man. Just be Be careful out there. Heed those risk warnings. The node knows.
Yep, the node knows. The node knows. So as soon as we end this, it should take you straight over to Jeff and the blockchain report. So actually, you know what? Let me see if that works. Before we end this, let me go to the live. And so I want to see if the live redirect works. But what do we get else? Oh, we got the market wrap. Well, we got the blockchain report. We got the market wrap here in about 2 hours with David. And we're going to go over some charts. And I think that's all we got for today. But till next time, Veteran Crypto out.
Peace.